It really does bring me great pleasure and an honor to sit with you two ladies who I've had the pleasure of working with as both of you D-Free within your respective organizations. And so today's conversation is really special. You know, we did, the call out for anyone that's a member of the Divine Nine organizations. And what you won't really know unless you're a part of an organization is some of the intricacies that go on in the infrastructure that it takes to run international organizations. Organizations that represent millions of women around the globe, and we have the pleasure of partnering with both of them internationally for D-Free. And so I know Shonda gave you a brief introduction, but I'd love for you all to speak on your own behalf. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience with D-Free and your organization. We'll start with Michelle.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michelle Dutton, and I'm a proud member of the Central Jersey Alumni Chapter in the Eastern region of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And we are really excited, as you know, about our partnership with D-Free, our long-standing partnership from our national president, Soror Elsie Cook Holmes, to the chairs of our program planning and development committees, my sorors Turner and Prince, and the chair of our Economic Development Committee, as we all know, Carmen McClendon. We are super, super excited about this relationship that we've established. And just to give a little bit about myself, after a 30-year career in corporate serving hard time, as a senior leader of engineering operations, I retired and started my own consulting firm. Because as we said earlier, we have to be entrepreneurs, not just in the corporate space. And my firm provides consulting and coaching services for leadership development, strategic planning, and growth practices for businesses. So very proud of that and really looking forward to working more with the community. And I have to say, I started with humble beginnings, so I really understand the impact of what finances can do when they're out of control. And so it was really important to me to understand the principles of D-Free and to get out of debt. And I have to say, being a first generation collegiate, a first generation corporate America, and within corporate America, it was important for me to get out of debt. So using the D-Free principles, even before knowing that they were D-Free principles, I was able to become debt-free within 10 years of getting out of college. So I understand the importance of that. My daughter was debt-free, getting out of college as well. So I absolutely put the principles to practice. And as I think Shonda and Tamika said, I've been affiliated with D-Free, not quite since its inception, but a good 11, 12 years, Tamika. I can remember we had many late nights fine-tuning curriculum and working on events and looking at how we could scale the organization. And so it's always been really important. Even as I was in corporate, just working on boards, making sure that I work with financial fortitude principles within the community, as well as education, STEM education. And so as I fast forward, I became the Delta liaison for D-Free, and it really started a tremendous partnership. And we're so proud of the partnership that we have with Dr. Soares, as well as the D-Free team, starting out way back with Lori Gibbs, Dr. Soares, when we looked at how we could cultivate this relationship. And I'm proud to say, because Delta is really focused on public service in the Black community, social action, and really just uplifting one another in our sisterhood. And with the help of D-Free and with this strategic partnership, we have been very blessed to impact our community in a big way. We have reduced more than $11 million in debt. That's huge. We have also engaged thousands of sorors and people in the communities that we serve. We have tens of thousands at our conferences and conventions, and we've also engaged people within the community within D-Free. We've activated more than 200 chapters. We've had a host of Young Money webinars with the pleasure of Tamika leading initially. We did one nationally, and then Shonda has also led multiple Young Money webinars. We've engaged our seniors because what we look at within Delta is financial fortitude across the generations. And so we have made sure that there's something within this continuum of D-Free and transforming our communities for everyone. And so we're really excited about this work because one of our 5 programmatic thrusts is economic development. And that's what we do, uplift our communities, transform the communities, and help people understand how to get out of debt. Because when you think about debt, it's a sickness. It's not only slavery, but it's a sickness. And I'm proud to be a part of the 12-step process to cure that addiction with the D-Free Village. So very excited to be here. My sorors are excited to be here and online. And we're just, very pleased and delighted by this partnership and the work that we have to do in the community going forward.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I have to do a public recognition of Michelle. Yes, we spent a lot of late nights getting D-Free together from the beginning, and it's been a pleasure to work with Delta Sigma Theta. You all were our first national partnership with the Divine Nine, and you really helped to open the door to those relationships. And with that, though, I will not be remiss if I didn't say from, when Gina first started reaching out to D-Free about bringing D-Free to Zeta Phi Beta, she was active from teaching it, learning it, becoming a leader, bringing it to her chapter. She did all the steps. And so you and Michelle did the same thing. If she worked on curriculum, Gina took it from a participant's perspective and really got involved. And so Gina, first, congratulations on your international recognition. We're very excited. So tell us a little about yourself and your journey in D-Free.
Sure. Thank you, everyone. And it is a blessing to be here. For me, I've been a Zeta for a little bit over 35 years, and I am a member of the Atlantic City Graduate Chapter. But for me, even though D-Free didn't exist, I don't believe in coincidences. And so 102 years ago, our founders established Zeta Phi Beta Sorority on the campus of Howard University and charged all of us to do something vastly different. And you'll hear Zetas talk about our community service, and we really strive to be those ladies who serve everyone. We believe in being in the house by the side of the road. So when D-Free actually came to me through a member named Dr. Aaliyah Brown, who told me about another member, Shonda Sutton. And when I was regional director, I took that charge to make sure that the Atlantic region was the preeminent region in Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. So I had programmatic authority over all of the states from New Hampshire to Maryland, and also over 5 countries, Liberia, Germany, Greater London, Belgium, and Ghana. So when Shonda said to me, we have this program, we have D-Free, really want to bring this to you, it was an answer to a prayer, because what it meant to me that the Atlantic region was going to have next level programming and would set the standard for Zeta Phi Beta in the programming that we wanted to do, not only for the community, but for our own members, because charity begins at home. So what we did was establish D-Free as a pilot, and it ended up becoming the national partnership based on the model set in the Atlantic region. So we started out with making sure that at every event, starting with our Atlantic Region Academy, we had a D-Free workshop, and we would call Shonda and she would come and there would be some type of workshop. And even when COVID hit, we made sure that we had some type of programming from D-Free. And so I'm happy to say that not from my efforts, but God answering the prayers and allowing him to use me in that way to make sure that we moved the Zeta forward with charity beginning at home and recognizing that organizational membership is costly and that we have to feed ourselves before we can go out and feed others. We wanted to make sure that we had that programming, and then our international president at the time, our immediate past president, Valerie Hollingsworth Baker, authorized us to make this a national program, and I know we're going to talk later about the structure that was set up, but to make sure that we had it as a national program, and proud to say that the model that we have is based on the model that we have set up in the Atlantic region. So it is my prayer that under our new president, Dr. Stacey N.C. Grant, the partnership will continue, that will keep that structure. All of us in our new roles are not about starting over and reinventing the wheel, but I am thankful for D-Free, for the established program that you had, for the program that was already in place, that we were already set up through no coincidence, I don't believe in coincidences, really set up to integrate it into Zeta's structure to make sure that we acknowledge that we're not going to start just out in the community, but acknowledge internally a way to help our members to get debt-free, be able to serve the community, and to continue to pour out into communities as our 5 founders told us to do 102 years ago.
Listen, I told you, you guys are in for a treat. You're in for a treat. So, you know, we talked earlier when we had our faith leader panel about what it takes to implement D-Free within a faith-based organization. We know there's hierarchy, there's organization. As African-American people, we do things in decency and order. As God's people, we do things in decency and order. So what I'd like for each of you to speak to next is kind of, you touched on it a little bit, how you got started with D-Free, but also any big aha moments or points of difficulty that you might have experienced as you launched, just so that other organizations understand what you may be coming up against as you consider getting started with D-Free. Let's start with Gina, and then we'll come back to Michelle.
So the difficult thing was that D-Free came along after we had an international president who had put out her programmatic thrust. So our regions, our states, our chapters were already implementing the programs and moving forward with that strategic plan. And then here comes D-Free and Gina, who's all excited about D-Free. And so sometimes you may get pushback on something else, another initiative. And the way we got around it was to make sure that the members understood that it fits within our National Community Service Initiative. Zeta's National Community Service Initiative is Z-Hope. Zeta's helping other people excel in mind, body, and spirit. And you cannot excel in mind, body, and spirit if you are worried about paying bills and you're in significant amount of debt. So what we let the members know is that D-Free is aligned with Z-Hope, and we made it a part of Z-Hope, and Z-Hope already existed. And so then you saw some of the concern come down. We also let people know that unlike other financial literacy programs, this is spiritually based. And that was something that resonated with many people. And so the 2 things that I did to make it resonate and made it a little easier was to say, we are going to start at home. And before you roll out D-Free into the community, I want you to roll it out in your chapter. Because if you get that buy-in and the success within the organization, then people are more likely to roll it out into the community. And the last thing that I did was to create positions on every level for D-Free. So just as you have the national liaison, at the regional level, we had a regional D-Free coordinator. And then I required the states to have a state D-Free coordinator. And then each chapter had a state D-Free coordinator. So what that created was accountability and someone who was required to move the program forward. Our Z-Hope program is successful not only because of what it stands for, but there's a point system. Everybody likes competition. Everybody likes to bring those awards home. So by implementing D-Free, as long as you did it within the Z-Hope guidelines, you also won things and you got recognized. So that was very, very important. So I think between the coordinators, making sure that we talked about it within the chapters and started at home was very important. Because one of the things I heard you touch on earlier and throughout this conference is that we, as people of color, are often uncomfortable talking about money. And I want to make us so that we're less uncomfortable with that. It costs money to join these organizations, or it costs money to maintain these organizations. You know, the dues and all those things, and then life happens. You get married, you have kids, you may lose a job. And so too, we recognize that in order to keep our members active, they need to be financially healthy. It really made people go, that was the aha moment, and said, okay, if I can get people to stay in the organization, come back to the organization, but we do need to be more comfortable talking about the cost of all of our organizations, whether they be Masonic, D9, any kind of organization, costs money, but we are not comfortable talking about it, but we should talk about it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Michelle, how did Delta do it? And what did you learn as you did it?
So as we got started, we had some similar processes, some a little different. So we did start with, at a national level, looking at the $1 billion challenge. That was a simple way to get started. We hadn't come along from a D-Free perspective with all the programming and curriculum yet. It was shortly after the Soledad O'Brien special where she talked about the almighty debt. And so the easiest way to jump right in, and I still recommend this, is to challenge the organization with something simple. Make a commitment for how much debt you're going to reduce personally and make it personal. So that was the what. So then we had chapters competing with how much debt you could reduce. And we did that throughout the chapters, sorority, as well as the community. Some chapters take the approach of, as you said, making sure you put on your own oxygen mask first. Some chapters had an in-depth relationship with the community, and so they brought them along up front with them to be able to reduce debt. So we started out with that big commitment for paying down debt, and we challenged ourselves each year to go deeper and deeper into debt reduction. And then we looked at, now that we have your attention and we're starting to change those conversations, how do you go about paying down debt? And the how is the D-free curriculum. And so with the how, we looked at how do we engage chapters, and we did something similar. We started off within the New Jersey chapters because we had a lot of members of First Baptist Church here, so it was easy to communicate and get the word out. They were already familiar with D-free. So we started with them and looking at the curriculum. Tamika and I did a big train of trainers and brought chapters in from across the country, right here at First Baptist. And that started activating chapters because we needed to get into the train the trainer and to get the message out there. And at the same time, D-Free was also putting together a process that was scalable and repeatable, so it made it easy to roll out the curriculum piece. And we started to engage with others and to engage with the community and to invite deltas into the events that we were having here at First Baptist, because when you're trying to start a grassroots movement, it first takes a courageous person to step out and to do something different. And then it takes a few more people to be courageous enough to follow that courageous person. And then they tell someone, and they tell someone. And that's how we ended up with thousands of people following our model. And so I think the difficulty was when it started to catch on, was just having the resources to meet the masses that wanted to participate. And so through our partnership, we started several training initiatives to get started and to really push the word further into the community and into the sorority. And when we implemented the curriculum, I think the most difficult part was realizing, well, it's a 12-week process. We don't want to shortcut the process because it's not easy to get out of debt. If it was easy, we wouldn't have such a problem right now. So it's a complicated process that's also complex, right? And so when you look at that, it's hard to position yourselves, especially in sororities where we have a lot of work to do across the spectrum, not just in the economic space, to have resources to commit to something that's so rigorous. But once people started going through the process, they understood the rigor. They understood why it had to be a 12-step process. And although now there's a lot of automation that's helping to get the word out and to help shorten the process, you still have to take that time to get the learnings. And so I think the difficulty was finding someone who could commit to 12 weeks straight, right, to teach a curriculum and not short-circuit it. So what we started to do was to break it up into modules. And we have 4 modules. You could get people to commit to 3 weeks. If you have different people teaching it, what we found is that once people experienced the class, not only did they open up and start talking about finances and start to transform the conversation of the community, but they wanted to keep going. We started getting the testimonies. We talked about how, people don't have money to commit to D-Free, so we love to use the Starbucks example, as we talk about the curriculum. If you're spending $5 a day on Starbucks, if we just talk about the week, because we know you go on the weekend too, that's $25 a week, $100 a month, right? That's $1,200 a year. Take that $1,200, take $60, buy a carrot, take the other $40, buy a whole, year's worth of the pods, and you can take the other $1,100 and invest in stock, invest in, Apple and Google. So we really looked at how do we engage people quickly enough so that they get it, and then they wanted to commit and go forward. So it was that process. So we started out nationally with the what of the $1 Billion Challenge. People started to understand the challenge. We added the curriculum. We pushed it out to the regions. We engaged each of the regional directors across our 7 regions and internationally. We have folks from Japan. We have folks, in all different countries on the calls. We were excited about that. We shouted them out. And we just really kept the momentum going to keep it growing right down to the local and national level. And this year, what we're looking at is pushing more how-to out to the chapters so that it can continue to grow. We touch our entrepreneurs. We partner with D-Free. I know they helped out with our Red Tank, where we gave out $70,000 to our entrepreneurs to invest in their innovative ideas. And it's important just to keep it in the forefront, right? We invest in our seniors. We invest in our collegiate sorors. And that way, they're coming to us saying, how can we get our chapters out there? How can we get the community? How can we do more and more and more? And Tamika has been gracious enough to continue to say yes, to the webinars and getting the word out. And we're looking at making sure that things are recorded, because we can take advantage of that so that the team isn't taxed so much with going out to all the events. But it's really just staying in the forefront.
Absolutely.
Tamika, I wanted to add one thing that was really important, I came from you in terms of an aha moment. COVID really helped, because one of the things that you kept saying to us is wants versus needs. And when COVID hit, it really forced people to understand what they wanted versus what they needed. And we all went through that thing with COVID at first, with the retail therapy, with the boxes coming every day, because we thought we were going to be in the house for 2-3 weeks. But as it stretched on, and we were able to take advantage of technology and what D-Free offered in the webinars, and really making people understand you can go without these things. And as you go without these things and save gas because you're not going to work and you're not spending money on dry cleaning, or you're not able to get your hair or nails done, you taught us that, you know what, you didn't really need that stuff, you wanted it. And now you're going to take that extra money and you're going to pay down your debt. So I definitely want to point out that as an aha moment for many of the members of Zeta Phi Beta.
Well, listen, this is how you know this is a kismet relationship, because my next question was, our theme for this year is actually financial healing, wisdom, wellness, and wealth. And so, as you mentioned, we're in this long COVID era. What does financial healing mean for you personally, and how do you feel like that may be showing up in your organization as you think about D-Free going forward? Whoever wants to start.
Okay. When I think about financial healing, I love when Dr. Soares talks about debt being the new slavery, as well as, how our community operates. Because spending money is definitely an addiction. Spending money, living beyond your means, living paycheck to paycheck, buying things that you want instead of buying things that you need, walking into apartments with big screen TVs, is not okay. It's not okay. And just like with any addiction, you first have to understand that it's a problem. The thing that's most impactful to me about D-Free is meeting so many people that don't realize it's a problem. They think this is what we do. And I had to do it, so my kids have to do it. There's no, generation over generational wealth, because that's going to make them weak. And I'm thinking, wow, that's an awakening. That is how we keep each other down. Keep doing that. Keep having that beautiful purse with nothing in it. Keep driving that car that you got to park because you can't afford the gas. That's a sickness. And we have to call it what it is. And with any sickness, what we know will work in our community is that 12-step process, one day at a time. Unfortunately, people are familiar with it. But thank God people are familiar with it, because they know it works. You have a systematic process that you walk through to become well. Each one teach one, lift as we climb. All the things that we're familiar with in our community, we need to put into play to go from being sick to being well. And the more we encourage each other to look like we have money versus having money, it's like crabs in a barrel. We don't want to spend all our money and become broke trying to look rich. And the rich people, are looking like they don't have money because they don't want you to try to come and take it. So until we understand the sickness that has been put into our communities, we cannot get well. So when you talk about financial healing, what was personal to me, I saw families destroyed in underserved areas with the material things. I have personal stories that we don't have time for, and seeing the destruction that it can cause people because they don't get it. And so when I think about personal financial healing, my goal is never to be broke. But I also teach D-Free in my family, to my friends. I just took my daughter's 12 friends through it because if she's going to hang out with them, they need to know about it too. Because what we do is bring each other down, but I would like to see a community where we lift each other up. And that's really where we are with it.
Thank you. That was excellent, excellent. Gina?
So for me, the healing, it really comes to play in two ways. Firstly, I'm watching people start to overspend again because the world is opening back up. And I'm watching them spend the money either that they don't have or maybe that they put aside that they saved during COVID when we were at home. And so that's very painful for me. And so what that pushes for me is really wanting to make sure that we double down on D-Free to make sure that we haven't forgotten those lessons that we should have learned while we were, when we first implemented it. So that is something that's very painful for me. But one of the things that we learned and we emphasize in Zeta Phi Beta is the alignment or the correlation between other society issues and lack of money. So one of the things Michelle said was, we're called upon as D9 organizations to address many ills, not just economic development or financial literacy. So what happens is, as things come up, we're civil rights organizations. We're dealing with basic needs. We're also dealing with social action. So what we've learned and what we've emphasized through our education is that when you don't have money, that impacts the increase in domestic violence. When you don't have money, it shows up as mental illness. And so there's a lot of other ills that we address as a sorority that are impacted because you don't have money and you're in debt, and the stress that it creates, and maybe the increase again in domestic violence. We have an initiative called Zeta Stings the Blues, which is dedicated to mental health, which if you look at that program, it talks about how finances impact that. So what it means to me is looking across the spectrum at all the work that we do and seeing that we really have to continue to make sure that people don't go back into debt, that they don't backtrack over this time of what may look like prosperity, which I don't know how we can look at it that way with these gas prices, but just being smart and using those tools that we learned while we were at home. And I really want to see us continue, because I am afraid of not just the impact on our organizations, meaning people not being active, people not returning to active membership or paying their dues or, participating in fundraisers, but what does it mean to that mom who the husband is now stressed and now he resorts to physical violence to get that out of the system because they're in debt. So that's what I want us to just kind of view it more holistically, and that's what we try to emphasize in the organization.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So as I get ready for my last question, I'm going to ask Shonda to come up because I do have a special presentation for both of you. But as we close out, can you give us one piece of advice that you would share for any organization that is going to consider establishing D-Free as a part of the work they do?
Integrate it into something that is already working for your organization. Every organization has some type of educational program. So for us, we have our Zeta Organizational Leadership Program, or ZOL. So our Train the Trainer fits within ZOL. As I indicated earlier, the social action community service aspect of it fits within Z-Hope. I think if you integrate it within what you already have existing, it won't be overwhelming to your members. And I can't emphasize enough, we have one of our chapter reps here today, Janella Puku, who, when you have someone at every level who's accountable and reports up to someone at the top, one of the two national directors for D-Free is from the Atlantic region because of the work that she did on the regional level. So I want to shout out to Theta and all the work that she has done for the organization as well. It is important that you make it your organizational members will see it as important when they see that you have someone specifically responsible for D-Free. And that is not only is it aligned with your current programmatic thrust, but it's aligned with the mission and vision of your founders when your organization was established.
Excellent. Michelle?
So what I would say is, when I think about D-Free, don't let your inability to do everything stop you from doing anything. And what I mean by that is you could easily be overwhelmed looking at D-Free and the curriculum and the events and all that you have to do, because I know in Delta we focus on not only just economic development, but educational development, political awareness and interaction. We also focus on international awareness and interaction. So we have to really be able to understand how they fit together. And for us, social action is a part of all of it. And I know, Dr. Soares talks about, because we have to change policy, someone said it earlier today, to be able to be effective in addition to teaching the community. And so when I think about starting, it's a lot that we have to do. And that's why you look at, but how do you start with something and then let it spread? And that's why we started with the $1 Billion Challenge and just exposing people. And now with D-Free Academy, it's online, it's automated. You can do a self-paced course. You can, if you don't have a lot of resources, because some of our chapters are as large as 1,000 members, some are as small as, 30 members. And so if you don't have the resources and if you're stretched, don't let that deter you, because you can easily set up an online class that's self-paced and have 1 or 2 functions to bring people together and talk about what they learned. And it's just an easy way to get started. And then you can build on that, because then the more people that start to learn and understand, then each one can teach one. So I say keep it simple. Make sure that people are really taking the time to get it. And then I agree with what you said with regards to tying it into other areas, because I know across all of our 5 programmatic thrusts, D-Free really fits in. When we think about social action and talking about the payday loans and talking about, fair housing and the stuff that just happened with that, D-Free fits into that. So social action plays a part. Education. We have to educate our youth. We have to educate one another. It fits in there. International awareness. Pastor Soares just came back from Ghana. I know in Haiti it was one of the, they were more excited about it than we were here. So we can't leave our international brothers and sisters, behind. So there's just so much that you can do with it. So pick one thing and get started. And I would say just challenge one another, not only to change the conversation, but how much debt can you pay down versus did you get that new pair of red bottom shoes? So just change the challenge and start with that. Take some time, do the $1 Billion Challenge, see where you can get to, and after a while people will ask, well, how can we reduce more debt? Because it's one thing to make the commitment, it's another thing to actually implement it. And then you can kind of go step by step from there.
Can I just issue a quick challenge?
Yes.
Because we've heard a lot about God today, and I just want to say God is about unity, and he is about prosperity. And you have 2 organizations that are here today, but there are 9 D9 organizations that represent millions of people. And I want to challenge our Council of Presidents, our National Panhellenic Council, to put the colors aside, put the differences aside, realize that we are all about the same thing, and let's, as 9 organizations, come together and promote D-Free. Because I think that's what is really God wants us to do, is to come together, recognize the need, and act as one.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is a phenomenal opportunity. You guys are sitting with 2 national representatives from 2 international organizations that represent African American and African women of the diaspora globally. And so because of that, we want to present both of you and your respective organizations with the commitment to financial freedom recognition for your respective organization, and truly thank you for your commitment to D-Free and financial freedom. And hopefully we can continue to expand our relationship to the rest of the D9. So thank them for being panelists today. Thank you all for your attention, and we appreciate your hard work. No, just take the picture. Just take. You want me to read? No, you don't.